Hi students, in the previous one we have discussed about the concept of the direct material and indirect material, the concept of the direct labor and the indirect labor. So the same concepts we will continue, and some of the concepts related to the production overhead we will discuss in this lecture. Okay. So now if you remember, we have discussed about the direct material. So any material in the production process that is easily visible, its cost is more, or the more quantity or the more value or the more volume is used, so that will be considered as the direct material. We have an example like in the wood will be considered as the direct material in manufacturing of the wooden furniture. For example, if it is a steel, or it may be a plastic, or it may be a cotton, or it may be a leather. So according to the production process, we have to see that which is the main material or which is the raw material which is due to the visibility, cost or quantity used in the production process. So that will be called as the direct material. Any other material which is not a main material but it is helping the materials, like we have a small screws, some nails are required, some thread is required, or the polish is required, or some other glue is there. So all these will be the small portion. Their visibility is less, their cost is less, and the quantity is less. So those material will be considered as the indirect material. Then we have discussed about the direct labor and the indirect labor. So any person who is directly involved in the production process, means in the manufacturing process, for example, the cutter in the wooden manufacturing company, or for example furniture manufacturing company is there and the cutter is there, any steel company is there and the welder is there, or the carpenter is there in the other business. So that will be considered as the direct labor. Some people who are not directly working but they are helping the production process. For example, the cleaner is there, the supervisor is there who is looking after all the things, like a foreman is there, or there is some repair or the maintenance staff which are helping the production process. So all these will be considered as the indirect labor. Now the next thing that is very important while producing something, its cost is very important part. So that is the production or factory overhead. We discussed that we have some material, we have a labor, but still the production will not start because we need some space, we need some place for the manufacturing. So that place will be called as the factory or the production area. Obviously there are so many costs are there which are the indirect costs of the production. For example, if you need a small room even as a workshop or a big factory for the production, what will be there? There will be the cost. The cost of the rent will be there. Why we need the cost of the rent? Because we need some factory, some location, some premises is there. Obviously the cost will be there. So that cost will be the part of the production overhead. So the rent of the factory. So we will write down some of the examples. So the first thing is what? Rent of factory. There's a possibility that factory is owned by the business. So in that case, the depreciation of the factory. So in that case, there is no rent, but there is a depreciation of the factory. Then what we need? We again need some of the expenses. For example, the fuel expense is there. The electricity expense is there, the gas expense is there, the water cost is there, even we have the like insurance is there. Okay, so the depreciation cost is there. So all these costs which are in the production process, other than the direct material and the direct labor, all the costs and the other indirect costs, means indirect labor and indirect material. So all the costs which are in the factory or in the production, so that will be called as what? As the factory overhead or the production overhead, or even called as the manufacturing overhead. So we have given, or we have discussed some of the example. For example, rent of the factory. If this factory is owned by the business, so then the depreciation of the factory, then some fuel is there, electricity is there, gas is there, water expenses are there, some insurance expenses are there, then there's an indirect material, indirect labor. So all the cost that is directly attributable to the production other than the direct material and direct labor, so that all costs will be the part of the production overhead. For example, if the repair and the maintenance cost is there, so the repair and maintenance cost will be the part of what? Part of the factory overhead. For example, if the workers are there and they need the insurance, so the cost of the insurance of the workers will be there. So the insurance of the machines, insurance of the factory, insurance of the human beings or the laborers they are working there, all it will be considered in the factory overhead. The same, the depreciation of what? Depreciation of the tools, depreciation of the machines, depreciation of the factory buildings. So all the depreciation will be considered in what? In the production overhead. You need some fuel, you need some other production expenses, you need some rent. So now rent of what? Rent of maybe the rent of the factory building, the rent maybe for the machines, and rent maybe for the some other vehicles they are using in the production. So all these things, any water expense, any electricity expense, any like a lubricant expenses are there. So all the expenses which are directly attributable to the production, so those are considered as the cost, and in the cost they will be considered as the factory overhead cost or the production overhead cost or simply the indirect cost. So it means while producing something we have a mainly three factors or the three parts of the cost or three sections that we are focusing. The first thing is what? Is the direct material, the second thing is the direct labor, and the third thing is factory overhead or indirect material. So these are the main three costs of the production. So factory overhead, any expense which is happening in the factory other than direct material and direct labor. Okay, direct material means what? Any material that is used in the production which has a more value, which has a more quantity, or it is easily visible, or it's, you can say the look is more, so it will be considered as the direct material. Direct labor means any person who is directly involved in the production, they are producing something, they are working on the machine, so that will be direct labor. And other than that, all the other things like indirect material, indirect labor, or all the other indirect costs, that will be the part of the production overhead. So three main things are included in the manufacturing process: direct material, direct labor, and the factory overhead. So if we add these three things, means the direct material cost, direct labor cost, and the production or the factory overhead, if we add all these factors, or you can say the parts of the cost or these costs, if we add, so that is called as the cost of production, or that is the cost of manufacturing. So the total manufacturing cost has three parts: direct material, direct labor, and the factory overhead. And factory overhead includes all the indirect costs associated with the production. I hope you have understood the concept, but still if you have any doubt, if you have any question, you can ask me in the comment section. Thank you very much.